Welcome to the Friendzy.
Hi, I'm Melissa Carter.
And I'm Jenn Hobby.
And here's our promise to you. The Friendzy is here to change the conversation around age
so that you can celebrate all your years rather than lie about them.
Real stories connecting real women. I'm Melissa, and when I was about 4 or 5 years old, everything was named Bert and Ernie, especially if they came in pairs. My father had cows, they were Bert and Ernie. We found frogs in the pond, Bert and Ernie. Everything was Bert and Ernie. Obviously, I was obsessed with Bert and Ernie.
I'm Jenn, and I'm an aunt to identical twin nephews, and one of their names is Ernie.
Oh, well, I'm going to call the other one Bert. I'm sorry. Sorry, Matt. Coming up on today's episode, we are talking about the book that you haven't written yet.
You'll also meet national best-selling author Mara Purl, who will take you inside her craft and how she gets in touch with her intuition in order to write her best work. Her process really could inspire you to get your book ideas from inside your brain out onto the page.
But first, have you subscribed to the Friendzy podcast yet? I'm not trying to look at you suspiciously, but I am. So we ask that you please do subscribe to the Friendzy and leave us a review. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts.
And if you enjoy this episode of The Friendzy, please share it with a friend of yours. We would love for more women like you to find out about our show. And Melissa, we are going to share some of our own book ideas, the books inside of us, and then meet up with Mara Purl here in just a minute. But first, let's thank our sponsors.
Kick it pajamas. So we harmonized there.
And you can use the code Friendzy for
a 10% discount.
We are the biggest dorks, aren't we?
You'd think we'd be drinking
and
during
don't
this.
Forget about
Lifeline screening. It's Lifeline screening.com. Get your veins checked.
Don't have a stroke.
Is something burning?
Oh no.
That's wrong. Isn't that what happens?
Isn't that what
before you have a stroke?
My goodness. Okay.
I'm wrong.
Okay, Melissa Carter.
Yes. Jenn Hobby.
Could you say, true or false, there are 3 books inside of you?
True. I could.
Okay. What are those 3 books going to be about?
I would say
you have not yet written a book.
I've not yet written a book. I have a children's book, Whale of an Idea.
That's awesome.
But I've not written. I think that would be so neat. I envy authors. Like I envy Mara, our guest today, because I just think it's so neat to be a published author. But I would say the first one would be my kidney transplant journey. My illnesses, feeling ill as a child and actually via the transplant, which will be 19 years this year, that I actually feel better as in my 50s than I did in my 20s. I think that coming out, my lesbian journey, and how that things have gotten a lot better, but I think that I broke some ground in media in Atlanta that nobody came through the gate with me, right? So I broke down some barriers and then nobody followed. So I think that there's still a long way to go with that. And then I think I would love to write one of those Southern Gothic novels about stories from my family that I've heard, right? So stories of my mom and my dad, but put them in fictional characters, because there's so many crazy people. And I mean like crazy, interesting personalities that I have been exposed to throughout my life through my family, that I would love to write one of those really cool Southern novels about. So those are my 3.
Those are awesome. Okay. Do you have any titles for any of the 3, either Kidney Journey, Coming Out of the Closet, or
you know what?
Southern Gothic?
It's funny you say that. So the Southern Gothic one, I think, because it would probably be the protagonist would be somebody who is dealing with family matters, right? Or trying to overcome some kind of family drama, because that usually is what makes a Southern Gothic tale. And one of the titles I thought of is Puppet of My Past. So like the puppet strings of your past is what controls what you do now. Something to that
I
effect.
like that.
Now, I don't
I
know. A
think you
book
should
publisher
call it
probably edit that.
Cartersville.
There's a whole,
Cartersville.
as soon as you said that, there is a documentary about Jimmy Carter out, and you tell me the book, your book titles and ideas, because I need to find out what the title of that documentary is, and that's what I would use. But you go ahead. What are your three?
Steal
Steal-
President Jimmy Carter's
Yeah,
title and
I
just
mean,
rip it off.
and look, let me ask you a question. It's already the documentary is already released. Do you know it? No, you don't. So say if I do it and make it more popular, then it's fine.
It'll be fine.
It'll
I'm
be
sure they
fine.
didn't trademark it. It's good. It's
No,
good.
it's fine. Going against the president. It's fine. No big deal. Anyway, yes. What are your stories? Because I know you've got
I
rich
I
stories
think
to
I've
tell.
got 3 books inside. I think the first one is the cancer mom journey of my
Absolutely.
daughter's cancer battle, and from not just the stories of going through it and the things we learned, and there's so many different stories to tell that I think would be interesting to read about,
Mhm.
because it's a little segment of life that not a lot of people know, the inside of a children's hospital, right?
Right. Right.
So I think that could be interesting, but just also the life lessons that we got out of it and how much it changed both of us forever. You don't go through something like that and not get changed
Right.
truly to your core of who you
Well,
are.
it's opposite of what you naturally expect, right? So you naturally
Mhm.
expect to your parent to go before you, and then your child after you, and then having to face a reality in which it reverses the order of things is unsettling in itself, let alone the details of all that. So
So it's like
I would absolutely read
yeah,
that book.
the stories, the lessons, and then the spiritual connection through it, I
Mhm.
think ran really deep. So I think that would be the best book inside of me. I think we have some really epic career stories we could tell of
Yes.
behind the scenes in radio. So I think
I'll write the
that
foreword for that.
I think we
I
could write that one together, right? Our expose of the
Yes.
radio world and just how many funny things happen. Because I even remember random funny things happening to us and being like, "This is a TV sitcom episode."
Mhm.
Just
Yes.
so many of those things. So the good, the bad, and the ugly of working in the media. And just the things we learned. I think we could tell some. I think that would be actually a funny book.
Mhm.
You
Yes, it could be,
know?
yes.
It
I
could be
mean,
a it could be a poignant book at times, but I think mostly that would be hilarious.
well, especially if you do it from, like you said, the standpoint of, like, is this really happening? I mean, maybe that's the title of the book. Is this really happening right now? So, yes, there are plenty of those moments, both
So
professionally and, I mean, professionally meaning in private negotiations with bosses, as well
yeah,
as just the exposure of all the industry itself. Yeah.
and just the goofy things that we did. I mean, I lost a bet and had to jump out of a pretend birthday cake in a bathing suit.
That's true. That's true.
Like, ridiculous stuff like that we did,
Yeah.
I think would be really fun to it would be a fun read,
Now do
because
I yeah.
I'm always thinking of, like, the reader on the other side. Would they be entertained? Would they learn something from it?
Well,
Would they
and
have fun?
Well, and they tell you write what you know, and I think for a lot of people, they think, "Well, what I know is boring, or what I know is not interesting to anybody." But that's why it's interesting, is because the other people don't know
Don't
this. So
know
what
it.
we take for granted, having done that for decades, people who've never done it would be fascinated by, like, because I guarantee most people in their work environment have never had to jump out of a cake in a bathing suit or go down the interstate at 100 miles an hour on the back of a motorcycle to face your fears, what I had to do.
Right.
And
Yes.
that was so ridiculous because there was no safety parameters there. I mean, every lawyer on the planet would have probably said that was the worst thing you could have done. Because I
Now you
mean,
wouldn't be able to do that.
oh, I would never want to, but at the time I thought, "Oh, this is
This is so
whatever.
yeah.
This is how I make it in the business." So,
Jumping out of an airplane on the air. Do you remember when I did
I do
that?
remember that, yes.
Anyway, so we have so many good stories. So I think that would be my second book. And my third book could be short but sweet. And I think it would be called Get Divorced.
Oh, damn. Yeah,
Like
okay.
divorce. I
Not
think it
what I
could
expected. I thought it's gonna be about our kids, it's gonna be sweet. Oh, but yes, you're right.
but
Okay.
divorce can be the best thing that has ever happened to you.
Yeah.
And I think it can be the best thing to happen to both people in a bad marriage. It can be the
Yes.
best, or maybe
And I think for
we could write that one together too, just called Split Up.
well, and I think that for yes, and I think for people who are staying together for the sake of their children, that would also be beneficial for them because
And I know that goes against everything that you think of when you get married and when you say your vows or when you commit to another person. The intention is never to split up, but
mhm.
in some situations, it's better for both people. It really is. And I
Well,
think
it makes
that
you and I think your book would also make people think seriously about marriage before they get into it because here we
yes.
live in a culture where a woman has or a teenager usually has a wedding book like you
Oh,
insert
yeah.
insert groom here. The most important thing to me about getting married is what color swatch am I going to use and what kind of flowers am I going to have, and I
Yes.
had all that. I mean, I was gay and I still had all that planned out because I thought a wedding, the ceremonial thing where it focuses on me and this is it feeds your ego, but that's not marriage. That's a celebration in one day. If you want, I mean, yeah. So I think that too many people rush into marriage based on infatuation when to me, true love and infatuation are two completely different things.
And you know what else I think people rush into marriage about, which was me and my story, round one, was the this is what I'm supposed to be doing at this time of life.
Yeah.
Right? It's like I'm of the age where I'm supposed to be doing this. This relationship is supposed to progress into marriage because I'm in my 20s. I would like to have a family and children. And so let's just do this now. So to me, it wasn't the fairy tale of the dress and the wedding day, although there's so much allure and magnetism to that. To me, it was this is the right time of life. This is what I'm supposed to
Yeah.
do.
No, that's really
And
good because you do the math around children and everything. And then now I laugh at it because I had my children in my 40s or I had my child and my mother had me in her 40s. So I was exposed to the life of, you got plenty of time, like your
exactly.
eggs aren't going to, yeah.
And I was
Yeah.
wanting to follow my mom's plan, which was get married, be married for about 5 years, enjoy your married life, and then have children. And my mom had me at 27. So in my mind, I was trying to follow her plan of get married in your early 20s, have time to be married, and then have a kid. So,
Good Lord. I
but
mean, now I
all
think,
that is like so dumb. I wish I would have looked more into what makes a good marriage, what's a good partner to choose, because it truly is one of the most important decisions you make in your life, if not the most important, is who's your person that you're going to
well,
do all this with.
and the older I got, the more I understood arranged marriages, which sounds terrible. I still don't subscribe to that.
Melissa Carter,
I
I'm
don't
so
subscribe to that.
surprised that
I
came
know.
out of your mouth.
I don't subscribe to it, but I understand the logic behind it because it's exactly what you said. If you match people up and you leave the adults to do it, then the arrange and you go into an arranged marriage with more logic than emotion. There are statistics that show a lot of arranged marriages last longer. Now,
Crazy.
I'm not, again, I don't subscribe to, I believe in choice. I believe that you choose who you are attracted to, because the sex part of the arranged marriage is what I don't agree with. Because like you can set me with somebody you think I'm supposed to be with, but if I don't want to have sex with them, this is going to be a difficult situation.
Mhm.
But I do think that, yes, I there are so many times that I've either gotten into relationships because of just pure attraction without that, and dismissing all the red flags.
Oh, yes.
Um,
I just read a book that was all about this. It's about mistaking chemistry for compatibility.
yes,
They are not the same thing.
right. And I guess that's what
Right.
I mean about, love
Yes.
and infatuation. Um, and then um I guess I've kind of done it too, but I've seen other friends who've done it too as an escape, as you're going to take care of me and I don't have to think about anything. So you're
Oh.
attracted to the controlling people who take care of things for you because you don't want, and then you realize there's not a limit to that control, right? And so then you
Mhm.
become unhappy. So it's just this, again, it's a knee jerk reaction to jump into a relationship, which is, you should let um, the passion and the infatuation, kind of wane a little bit before you get married. and see if you still like the person, right? Are you still friends? Do you still like them? Do you still look forward to seeing them, even if you don't have sex with them? And that's why I think when people say, have you had your first fight yet? Because that's usually a telltale, like what you fight about that first time is sometimes can tell whether you're compatible or not. Anyway, there's so many relationship things, but I think that that would be a very interesting book. And that's in something else when we talk about sharing your story and, do you have a book inside of
Yes.
you? It's because you need to share it. And so if you wrote that book, you know how many women would pick up that book? Because we still, there's probably a lot of women who are like you, like, well, I'm not supposed to get divorced. So even though I'm miserable, I need to stay here because I need to please my mom and dad. I need to please, I need to please everybody, Jen. I need to make sure that my children don't have to say they come from a divorced family, even though their children may be miserable in that situation. So one quick, I know someone who came from a divorced family, right? And her mother, very independent business owner, like, and she did the same thing, and she became very successful. Her mother's sister, in a miserable marriage. So this is her aunt. Her aunt, miserable marriage, stayed in the miserable marriage. The man even brought the mistress into the home, and she stayed. And the children are very different in their ambitions, and the children are very different in meaning their ambition to get married quick. I gotta get married quick. I gotta do these very things. So it's this mechanical calendar, like you mentioned. And so I remember thinking from that observation is how you value yourself as a mother sometimes in those situations. If you have to get a divorce, is it abusive? Do you value yourself? Do you think you should stay? You are teaching your children how to handle relationships. And so just from that observation, like, children subtly take cues from their parents on how to handle their life in the future. So I think that you really have to, for the sake of the children, really analyze that.
Does your friend that comes from the divorce family, is she more ambitious and independent because her mother was?
Yes.
I
think she saw her mother stand up for herself. I can tell you, one of my best friends growing up, this is an absolute situation. She's been married now, gosh, probably 20 years at this point, in a happy relationship. But when she was little, she had an alcoholic father. And this was in the 70s when people really weren't getting divorced very often. And I only knew her divorced. My mother was friends with her mother and knew the situation. So I got more information from my mother as I grew older. But my mother even gained more respect for her friend who left her abusive husband and raised her four children on her own.
Wow.
I had two because I was friends with two. There was age difference, but her first husband had passed away. So she had the two children. Then she got into that second marriage probably too fast and got with an alcoholic, had two more children, left him, raised those four children, all four children, higher education, all very successful. And my friend says, without a shadow of a doubt, she is who she is because her mother stood up for herself.
Awesome.
And so anyway, so I have always been exposed to friends who have been part of divorces and benefited from the divorce. So I can tell you firsthand, not all divorces have to end in tragedy. And I don't think my son is going to suffer because his two mothers did not make their intimate relationship work. So I'm an advocate. I'm an advocate if it's the right choice to make.
That's another story you could tell. You got 4 books. I just gave you another one.
Oh, that's right. Katie, Joe, and I. Well, we've teased about writing a book together because we're making it up as we go along, but so far we think we're doing a pretty good job, and we, and we're in it together.
You think that your life, like you said, is so mundane and boring or whatever. I would be fascinated to figure out, how do you co-parent?
I do think I'm boring. I do. That's so funny. Yes.
As a lesbian couple, first of all, who goes through this like crazy fertility journey in order to have your son. Then you split up, Wendy's a baby, and survive it. And now you can actually like sit side by side at his games and practices and get along.
Yeah.
Dude,
I was
that's such a great book.
I was telling Jen off air that my son is in swimming, and Katie
Yes.
and I, it just happened. Her girlfriend wasn't able to go, and it was just me and Katie. Because normally now with our lives, it's other family members are there too. But Katie and I are on texting each other every day, and it was just me and Katie, and we were sitting there during this, swim meet and having a great time. And I remember thinking to myself, we have not just sat, just her and I, because our son was in the pool. So I'm like, we haven't just sat her and I and kind of we were people watching and making comments about people and stuff and being 14. But still, I mean, but we were laughing and having a good time. And I thought it was so nice to be able to just hang out with her like that. And there was no romance, there was no attractions, nothing like that. It was just very nice to be hanging out with my friend who I happen to have a child with. And we're at that point. Yes, we're at that point where
I'm adding another book to your list. That's it. That done.
Just the other day we were sitting
book.
laughing and teasing about people, and that was a lot of fun. So and it's important for us to see, for our son to see us do that and do it authentically. So and we did, and we've accomplished that. So
impressive.
So I need to become an author is what I understand.
Yes, this is it. This is New York Times bestseller list material right here.
Well, I don't. Sure. We'll see if Mara agrees.
Okay.
Today's awesome guest is best-selling author of women's fiction, Mara Purl. Now, Mara Purl is the creator of the Milford Haven novels and stories, which have won more than 30 book awards. As an actress, Mara's regular role on the TV soap opera Days of Our Lives, which was my favorite, opened the door for her to create her own soap.
Mara is a frequent speaker at writing and author conferences. She works privately as an authoring coach, and Mara was named Woman of the Year by the Los Angeles County Commission for Women. When we met Mara,
is this to say badass on the award?
That's what it says.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's the trophy. It's right behind her when you watch this on YouTube. Now, when we met Mara, the technology struggle was real. So please help us welcome our most patient guest ever, Mara. I'm recording now. We just have to apologize. Mara,
no worries.
Welcome to the Friendzy. We're so sorry that we've been off to a rough technology start today.
Yeah, we're going to get Mara. You get the most patient guest ever on the Friendzy Award. We don't have the statue yet, but
one of my favorites. Yes.
My goodness, today has been a challenge.
So basically, So, and Mara, you probably can attest to this because you have to do technical stuff. But, we came on and we used StreamYard, but one of our computers, Janobis, ended up having something that caused some audio issues. So we're like, we're just going to, jump off and we'll just reboot and we'll redo it. And then Jen's computer took 45 minutes to load.
It felt like 45 minutes. It sure did.
Anyway,
does it sound okay to you now?
Yeah, we're going to do it. We're moving forward, and people are just going to, you know what? We're going to talk about technology, I think, because
sounds good to me.
Yeah. So Mara, you had mentioned off air because first of all, Mara came early, and then we had the technical difficulties. So she's already had lunch, and she's already probably written another book.
Yeah,
during that time.
No kidding.
So Mara, you had mentioned earlier about how you're doing audiobooks from home, and you made a quick comment about technology. So do you mind talking about that a little bit?
Oh, no, I'd be happy to. Yeah.
Yeah. So how has that been difficult?
Well, I'm spoiled because for many years I've been working with my dear friend Bill Bercuda. I call him Engineer Bill. And we did a radio drama for the BBC and many different kinds of projects. We did student radio drama where I was teaching as a guest teacher in several schools, and we'd have the kids come in and record their parts for radio drama, which was such a blast. And then we sort of came full circle and started doing audiobooks, which, as you know, have just exploded in popularity. Mm-hmm. So we have this wonderful small studio in Burbank in Los Angeles, and it just, he built the studio himself, and it has this perfect sound quality. Then the pandemic hits, and we had, a number of books lined up ready to go. Some of these are fiction, and so we have several actors who can perform characters I'm in that list. And then we have others who do nonfiction. And if possible, I prefer to have the author read their own work. So we would invite them to Los Angeles. Well, we couldn't do that. And so nobody could go anywhere, as we all know. So Bill started investigating the correct equipment that could easily be shipped to the person. Then we would do these Zoom calls and coach them on this iPad, you use this program, that's for your script. On this iPad, you use this program, that's for recording. This is the mic you use. This is how close you need to be to the mic, on and on. And
Wow.
Some people, were quite adept, and other people, it just took 10 coaching sessions before they could get it and try to remember it. And then we had to figure out a way to upload audio files, which, as you know, are large. And then they all land at Engineer Bill's studio, and then he has to edit. And then we want to listen down to them, make sure everything is correct, and so forth. So it took 3 times longer to accomplish these. And then, interestingly, most of our clients want to be on Amazon. And then there's a portal called ACX. And it was very good. And I think they all got so overwhelmed in the pandemic that there started to be a 1 month, 2 month, 3 month delay. And then they changed some protocols without notification. So it has been interesting. But most of our audios have been winning some awards, and we so enjoy doing them, and it's very satisfying. So
just to call myself out, as I'm speaking, there is a kind of a haze or a hum. So I'm going to mute myself during this interview, but I think it's appropriate that we're talking about technology.
I know. Well, it's been such a blessing in the last year that we get to use technology to stay connected. I mean, Melissa and I were able to launch this podcast, The Friendzy, during the pandemic because of technology, but it's also been a struggle. And she always teases me because I'm usually the one that's pretty cursed with technology.
Well, you still are, but yeah, anyway, no, I'm just kidding. But it is, but I think that also being older, because, the Friendzy is for women over 40. And I think that for some women over 40, I think that we don't give ourselves enough credit for figuring technology out, right?
True.
I think for a lot of us, we just automatically dismiss it like we're not capable of doing it. And so, but we are. I know a lot of friends who have that feeling. So, and also, Mara, when it comes to being older and doing new things, I mean, you talk about that with the pandemic with audiobooks, but everything, I mean, like, you're a musician, you're an artist, you're an actor, there's so many things that you've had to reposition and pivot depending on what, the climate is economically.
Well, I think in some careers, there is a sense of security, be it accurate or not. Whereas in the arts, we are in the practice of reinventing ourselves. And this becomes an advantage when the world starts shifting unexpectedly. We're already prepared to reinvent ourselves. And it isn't always easy, but it's always this marvelous challenge. And so you dig deeper and you think about what you have to offer, how you can help others, how you can use the talents that you have or maybe develop new ones. And I think the pandemic has been really kind of wonderful in that regard. I mean, there's been terrible suffering, for which I'm very, very sad. But there has been great creativity too. And so, as you say, there are so many of us who have figured out new ways of working, new ways of connecting. We've all become experts at Zoom and Skype and so forth, which is great. There's a kind of intimacy about it. I mean, I've joked with friends that when I did Myers-Briggs, the personality type profiling, I was just dead even between introvert and extrovert. And that's what my life looks like. Half the time I'm writing, a totally introverted activity, and half the time I'm either performing or speaking or doing live events of some kind, and that's the extrovert side. Well, during the pandemic, my introvert was thrilled. I got so much work done. I got 2 books written. I got through all my dad's papers. I got through all kinds of stuff. And by the way, when did I ever think I was going to get to those things? right? So I did, which was
True.
wonderful. But my extrovert self has been whiny and kind of panicked, like, meh, am I ever going to be able to be with people again and perform again? And I know that so many of us have felt that way. So I'm grateful that we're slowly rebuilding. But I don't think we're going to go back to normal. I think we're going to go forward to some sort of new normal, whatever it's going to look like.
What do you hope that new normal includes?
I hope it still includes some of the best of the technological advances that we have made. I think it's wonderful to be able to sit and have a conversation with a girlfriend in Tokyo, whereas you used to have to wait to try to plan a trip. That's just great. And I think just more gratitude for when we can be together, gratitude for when we can make a difference for someone else. There were a lot of kind of great things we took for granted, maybe particularly in this country. And I think it would be great if we could maintain our awareness of kind of how really good life can be.
I think in the new normal for me, I want to keep reading. That's something in the pandemic I picked back up again because we were working all day on screens. I didn't want to be on a screen later at night. And so I started reading again. And I just forgot how much I love books. And isn't it funny that it would take the world shutting down to rediscover how many books were on my bookshelf that I was like, oh, I'll read that someday. And then finally the someday came. And so as an author, have you been inspired by that? Because I feel like I'm not the only one who started reading again.
Oh, definitely. I read a lot anyway. So I don't know that I read more, but I challenged myself to think about what is going on in the world of readers and how can I contribute. So for example, I had, a modest budget for live events. When all those got canceled, here was this little bit of money. And I thought, well, how can I repurpose that? And I started thinking about independent bookstores, which I just adore. And they were among the small businesses really suffering. So I came up with this thing. I called it, I did a hashtag, send indie gift book. So I'd contact a reader and say, would you like a free book? The answer was yes. And then I would say, can you send me your snail mail address? And then I would look on the IndieBound website and find the independent bookstore closest to them. Then I would call that bookstore and order a book. And at first that was fine. And then the bookseller would say, you are Mara Purl. Why are you ordering a book by Mara Purl? And I'd say, I'm doing this to support you. And then they were like, oh, really?
Aww.
And so I was connecting a local store with a local reader that may not have had that connection before. And some of the bookstores did special wrappings, some of them hand delivered.
Aw,
And so,
cool.
my reader then gets a free book from her local bookstore. And she's like, oh, I didn't even know I had a local bookstore. Cool. And so now they start going into that store and telling people about it. So I worked with maybe 30 bookstores around the country, and I'm really having so much fun with it. I might just continue to do it.
Absolutely.
Can't hear
I
you,
think,
Melissa.
Melissa, I think you're muted.
There we are.
Yeah.
So let me ask you a question, Mara. Fantastic idea, by the way. But a lot of people think I got a book in me. Do you agree?
I love authors, and I help authors any way that I can. And I feel if you get that tap on the shoulder that says I'm supposed to write something, then you need to pay attention to it. It doesn't mean it's going to upend your life or your career. It doesn't mean you're going to be a blockbuster author, but it could mean you have something important that you really need to share. So I think it's a little voice. Did you ever read or hear anything about Joseph Campbell?
I did not.
Hero's Journey, yes.
Hero's Journey. Joseph Campbell was a mythologist, and he came up with this awareness that the hero is iconic in every culture. and he started tracing those similarities. He eventually worked with George Lucas when he was creating Star Wars. So the hero's journey often begins with a reluctance, like it does for Han Solo. Me, I don't want to participate in this stupid war, And that can be the beginning of your journey. It's the very thing you're afraid to do or you don't want to do. Anyway, I had the honor of working for Joe and his wife when they had a theater in New York called the Open Eye. And this was before Joseph was quite so famous, though he had written A Hero with a Thousand Faces, which is, a seminal book. But this was when he started talking about follow your bliss. And he's, we now have like the t-shirts and the mugs that say follow your bliss, but that was Joe. And he said it isn't necessarily like a big gong, going off in the woods. It can be a little feeling. And he said, if you feel really good about something, just a sense that was good, he said, try it again, because that could be the opening of your path.
And when those whispers happen, how do you know that you should listen to that one versus a different one? When they come up for you, how do they feel differently?
I am not afraid to test those. So I might say, yeah, that might be good. I'm going to wait, though, see if it comes again. And if it's a real thing, it does. And it might be that same night, that same morning, that same afternoon where you go, there's that thought again. I should write that down. I should see where this is going. I think intuition is sort of denigrated in our culture. As a matter of fact, this ultimately became the whole premise and theme of my whole series of novels. It's head versus heart, or it's the journey from head to heart. So in our culture, we are encouraged to use our intelligence. And I'm not suggesting that we shouldn't. We need to be very smart, use our logic, use our intellect, really look around, pay attention. But there's another internal guidance system, which is the intuitive one. And sometimes it's a warning, sometimes it's a positive feeling. And we tend to say, oh, that's silly. I shouldn't worry about that. But, hey, I think it can save your life. You have a funny feeling you shouldn't walk across the parking lot? Then don't. You have a funny feeling that this is something you should write? Then do. Or a sense that, I should call that person. And you make the call and you just catch them. They were on their way out the door and they would be gone for 2 months. But because you paid attention, you connected. I think intuition is just super powerful.
You had mentioned about testing those, ideas out like Jenn asked, and that takes confidence. And so I think for a lot of women, they don't listen to that because they don't feel they need to be perfect. And if it goes outside of that perfection that they're perceiving themselves to need to have, they'll ignore it. So what advice do you give to women who don't listen to those voices inside?
Well, there's something about we women that has to do with the to-do list. Are we even on our own to-do list? Everybody and everything else is first. And because we're way at the bottom of that list quite often, I think that's why we get in trouble. That's why we haven't prioritized ourselves, because after all, we're not so important. But the fact is, you can't really be there for your children, your spouse, your community, your job, unless you prioritize yourself. It's not about ego. It's about respecting who we are and standing for who we are. And then I think we kind of end up opening our ears better, to hear that guidance more clearly.
And when you're tapping into your intuition, Mara, what do you do to make sure that that is flowing and loud and clear? What are some of the rituals?
Did you ever read The Artist's Way? Right? And it's such an interesting book, and there's a workbook that goes with it. I think, everyone, especially every woman, should take the time to put herself through this workbook. And Julia recommends morning pages, for example. And I remember talking to this wonderful Chumash Native American elder who became a friend of mine about that practice of writing things down in the morning. And she said, sometimes I can't think of anything to write. And so I just look around. And she said, one day I said, there's dust on the Venetian blinds. And that's where I started my morning pages. So it doesn't really matter where you start, how perfect it is, how perfect it isn't. Just acknowledge what you're seeing, hearing, feeling, and just start writing things down. It's a kind of purification and a kind of acknowledging of where you are in this moment. So that's one ritual that I must say I don't use absolutely every day, but it's a great tool to have in your toolbox. Taking walks, going on artist dates where you either sit by yourself in a cafe and hear the sounds and, you know, inhale the espresso and just look at some beautiful painting on the wall or look at a sunset. These elements of beauty flow into your inner cauldron, and you draw upon that when you're doing any kind of work at all, whether you're a medical nurse, a caregiver, a painter, a singer. We all need to keep refilling what I call that cauldron, because we will be drawing on it.
That is really awesome.
Mara, talk a little bit about your inspiration for your book. I mean, you're a prolific writer. So, I mean, how do you find inspiration for the things that you write?
I think I'm fascinated by people. And I think that curiosity and fascination is a great thing to have if you want to be a writer. There's a funny story. I used to go to the farmer's market, which is a wonderful, rich, rambling place in Los Angeles. And it has lots of kiosks, all different kinds of food from all over the world, and rickety little tables. And I would take in those days, my laptop was a yellow pad. And I would take that and my pen and sit there, have a coffee, and, just listen and look. So this couple gets their breakfast, and they appear to have been married for about 100 years. And they totter over to their little table and put down their trays and sit down. And she says, "Your sleeve is in your food." And he says, "No, it's not." And she says, "It would be if I didn't tell you." I mean, it was the encapsulation of an entire marriage. And I found it just so touching and so hilarious. My husband and I now have a saying. We just look at each other and say, "Your sleeve."
That's great.
But to really listen to how people actually talk and to get a sense of how they're actually feeling is, I think, an important technique, and it offers a lot of inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just seem to have a lot of people running around in my head. I had a friend who used to say, "Well, good night, everyone," because I've got a cast of 10 regulars and 10 visitors. I mean, I started out writing this story as a radio soap opera. And soap opera, I had been an actress on Days of Our Lives, which inspired me about this longer form of storytelling. And I thought, I think maybe I could do that. And then I was invited to this beautiful little coastal town to spend a summer performing in a play. So by night, I was busy in the theater, and by day, I was so curious about life in a little town. I mean, I grew up in Tokyo. Then I lived in New York, and then Los Angeles. So what I know about a little town was nothing. So I was just fascinated. And then I thought this would be a good framework for a story where the implications, the ramifications of actions kind of bounce back right away. because it's this little microcosm. So I started writing this story, and it eventually became a hit radio drama, which was very, very exciting. And that was on the BBC. And then publishers approached and said, let's develop this into books. So that's kind of the path. It's kind of backwards from most people. Most normal people would write a book first, and then it becomes, a movie or something. But I came from a theater background, so dialogue and dramatic structure was kind of built in for me. In fact, the first draft of my first novel was so terrible because it was just dialogue. That's all I knew how to write. I had very little knowledge of narrative voice. So it's been a long journey to get good at that. But I did receive that tap on the shoulder, that call to, hey, you should do this.
Well, and you
Mara,
answered it.
Yeah, that's right. And you didn't have to have it perfect before you started. I love that you were like, I knew how to write dialogue. This is what I do. My whole first book was dialogue, and that's what it was going to be to get it started. Yeah.
It's just terrible. But all the mentors along the way, I'm so grateful for those experiences. I mean, I wanted to know, how does a book get bound? And a friend took me to this bindery. And so I sat there with this woman. I called her the crone. She was this wise woman, like Baba Yaga or something. And I showed her, what I had done at FedEx, print it out and get it bound. And she looked at it and she said, well, it's pretty darn good considering you don't know what the hell you're doing. And she said, the gutters are wrong. And I said, oh, what's the gutter? And just learning the terminology. And it's not that I had to know, I wasn't going to become a bookbinder, but I wanted to understand the art and the craft of creating a book, because yes, my words would be the substance of it. But then when it gets into the hands of a reader, it needs to be this lovely experience.
Well, you had already experienced some, fame by being a soap opera actress, and, you weren't writing for the purpose of getting attention. You were writing for the purpose of loving the craft. And I think that is what some people don't get correct when they're trying to express themselves publicly.
Yes, perhaps so. It's really a journey. And although after a while, you get a sense of mastery over certain aspects of it, there's just never a time when there isn't something else to learn.
Mara, how much of your own life experience or challenges you have faced or tragedy you have gone through in your own life ends up in your storytelling?
Well, probably quite a bit. You have to write what you know. Sometimes it comes from other people's experiences that have interested me or captured my attention. Sometimes it's difficult to write about your own pain. And so I think it's taken a long time for me to get around to some of the deeper elements of writing. I had a really interesting experience writing my most recent book. And it's my first paranormal. And I didn't really even see how it could fit into my series, which really is women's fiction. But I lost both my parents a few years ago. And so that journey, it was awesome. It was painful, but also extraordinary and amazing. And so I really had to ask myself, well, what do I think happens here? Does life continue? Do we go on? Are we still ourselves? Do we turn into some amorphous cloud? Or do we still have our identity? Well, those were difficult things to answer. And I think it took me a few years, to sort of really get into that. And then writing this book was very interesting, kind of spiritual experience.
That's awesome. You were able to pour that into it. I love that.
Well, having to face your own pain to do it. Like, it's not like you just can spend 30 seconds doing it. Like writing a book is a time intensive thing. And here you were having to work with that. I became an orphan last year, so
Oh, I'm sorry.
I relate to how I'm still processing that, and will always be processing that because it's a new reality that I'm not an expert at yet. So,
Yeah.
not even close. So, Mara, we talked about independent bookstores. We want people to know where to find this women's fiction. Would you prefer them to go to indie bookstores near them, or would you rather them come directly to you?
I would prefer people use whatever their favorite way of getting a book. For some people, that's a Kindle. Well, all my books are on Kindle. For some people, that's their local independent bookstore and it's a print book. As Jen, you were saying, sometimes, we're on screens all day. And when we want to cozy up to a book, we want the actual physical book.
I'm old school when it comes to that. I want the old school book. I want to smell it. I want to smell the pages.
Oh, yes.
I want to feel them in my hand. And nonfiction books, I want to jot notes in the margins. I want to make it mine. I really want to make it worn in. And if it falls in the pool while I'm reading, it falls in the pool. It's like,
yeah. No, I love that
I like
too.
to read.
I love physical books, and I can't imagine, a house or an apartment without books on a shelf. Mm-hmm. It's so big. It's so much who we are and how we've journeyed in life, and going into a friend's house and looking around their bookshelf is like so fun. So Barnes and Noble is fantastic. If people enjoy going into that store, by all means, and you can get my books there. If you love having everything on a tablet, my books are on Nook and Kobo and all these amazing readers. I don't want to limit how people can enjoy their reading. And for that matter, some people don't really want to read, they want to listen.
So many of my friends have jumped into audiobooks headfirst and just swear by it. And they listen to so many more books because they're doing the audio versions of it.
Well, we recapture time that would otherwise be lost if we're commuting in a car or a train or whatever it might be, or on a flight. So, there's that. And then in some cases, I understand the book better because either the reader or the performers are so fantastic that they bring something to it that I couldn't have imagined on my own.
I have a question about the Milford Haven novels and stories that you are the best-selling author of. If someone wanted to start reading them, do you need to start from the beginning, or can you pick up your latest book and start there?
You really can start anywhere. Okay. You won't be hopelessly lost. I personally prefer reading anybody's series. If they have a series, I prefer reading it in order for two reasons. One, we writers grow. And so then you have the fun of seeing the development of the writer, maybe getting a better handle on their characters, or maybe the characters themselves grow and change, and I think that's fun. I've designed my series that the core novels are pretty much a lockstep, and I think it's more fun to read them in order. But then there are novellas and novelettes that really stand alone. They do enhance the story. They get you to know some of those main characters better, but they have beginning, middle, and end. And that's so that some people, it's funny, some people don't want to commit to a series. They just want to test the waters. And then if they like it, they might get involved. I do have some readers who get irritated because not all the storylines conclude at the end of novel number 1. I try to warn them, but some people don't like that kind of reading.
All right. So, Mara, we do something with every interview, and since you are our most patient guest ever, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you.
We do something called the Friendzy 5, which is 5 rapid fire questions. It's whatever comes to your mind. Are you ready?
I guess so.
All right. No pressure. Where is your cozy happy place?
In my office.
What is your favorite framed thing in your home?
Picture of my husband.
Sweet. What's your most memorable birthday?
Uh, in 2010, I had this party for my close women friends, expecting maybe 2 or 3 of them to come, but 10 of them came, and they came from different parts of the world. And we spent a weekend together up in the Central Coast, which is, that sweet spot for me. And it was just amazing.
Fantastic.
Beautiful.
Now, what is a daily routine or ritual that you stick to?
I start writing the minute I get to my desk. And that might be at 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
There are times that my stories really wake me up. And if I'm awake and the story is starting, then I just come to my desk. I don't always assume that those kinds of ideas and thoughts will come again. I think there's something to be said for being faithful to the muse. And I'm pretty rigorous about, I'm sitting at my desk by 8 o'clock. But I'm just saying sometimes I'm there earlier and sometimes I'm there very late. Michael Crichton talked about when he's starting a book, he's just sort of thinking about it. And then when he's close to finishing it, he's totally obsessed. That would be me. So when I'm close to finishing a book, I'm rather insufferable. That's all I'm thinking about.
Well, it's better than the opposite, where you start something obsessed and then you're like, well. That's why.
Very true.
That's why you and Michael Crichton are best-selling authors.
That's right.
And finally, what fashion trend did you jump on?
Well, when I got to college, it was torn jeans and Dr. Scholl's sandals. And all of that was just like too cool for me. I couldn't seem to adapt to that kind of fashion. What I found was these clothes that I'm wearing today that are made by a company called Simply. They're indestructible. You can mush them in a ball in your suitcase and arrive and everything looks fine. So they're comfortable, but they're great colors and they have some style. And so that's probably it for me. I doubt that I will be focusing so much on having the latest and greatest trend. I've arrived at a place where I know what feels good for me.
Mm-hmm. No wrinkles. No wrinkles.
No
feels
wrinkles.
Good.
Yeah.
I love that. I need to write down that website. What was that again, Mara?
Simply.
Okay,
Already.
got it. You already bookmarked it. Melissa's already got 2 things in her cart. Well, it's been wonderful connecting with you. How can our listeners find out more about you? Give us your website and where they could follow you on social media.
My website is marapurl.com, and the spelling of my last name is Purl.
Mm-hmm.
And on social media, I'm Twitter at Mara Purl, Instagram Mara Purl, Facebook Mara Purl, and there's a page, the Milford Haven page, on Facebook.
Fantastic.
Awesome.
Mara, thank you
Wonderful.
so much.
You are so welcome. And what interesting women you are. Now I'd kind of like to interview the 2 of you.
Yes, ma'am.
I mean,
Anytime.
I think it's awesome that you founded your wonderful podcast, and I really wish you all the best with it.
Thank you,
Thank
ma'am.
you so
Appreciate
much.
that.
Appreciate
I hope to have you
you
back too. Maybe,
Thank you.
maybe we have some event with you. That would be great.
That'd be awesome.
Wonderful. Would love to.
All right. Fantastic. Thank you, love.
Thank you. Take
All
care.
right,
Mara,
Take
take
care.
care. Let's grab a fun question out of the You Don't Know My Life box.
All right. Today's question, let me show it here on YouTube. That's the game that you can buy for yourself. What item that you lost, misplaced, or had stolen do you wish you could have back?
Every lip gloss I've ever bought.
Oh, dang.
I'm telling you, if there's a lip gloss that I like,
All your friends just got called out.
and I spend a lot of money on it, I will lose it. I don't know why that is. Now, if I go to like,
Oh, they're
the
not borrowing
pharmacy-
it.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were calling out your friends on that. That's why I laughed
No.
so hard.
Well, maybe it is my friend stealing them, or it's just rolling out of my purse, or whatever it is, or I misplace it. But if I buy a cheapo lip gloss, I'll keep it forever. But if I go like high end, if I go Glossier, if I go like nice ones, I will for sure lose it within 2 to 3 days of having it.
That's hilarious.
It's just a knack that I have. Yeah. So Sephora gets a lot of my money from repurchasing lip gloss. Okay.
Maybe,
I'm sorry.
maybe
Go
they put
ahead.
maybe on the expensive ones they put a little weight in there to make sure that it rolls out.
Away.
Right.
I don't
And
know
if they
what
don't,
it is.
that's great technology,
They
right?
should.
To sabotage. So my story's a little more serious than that, but I mean, I don't want to be a downer. That's funny. You can laugh. I don't, whatever. So I had my kidney transplant back in 2002. My father passed away in 2001. And so there were a few of his things that were divvied out to everybody. And one of the things that I got was an army jacket. It was just a plain, I know, green, you know where this is going, green army jacket that had Carter on the lapel. Now he was a tall, thin man and he was in shape. And when I was emaciated from dialysis, I could wear the jacket. So I was able to, so I used that as a fashion thing. And right before the transplant, I had this dry cleaner that I frequented. And so I had a bunch of dry cleaning that I sent to the dry cleaners before surgery. So it shows you how in my mind, I'm like, I'm coming back. So I'm going to come get this after surgery. So had the surgery. I was only in the hospital for a few days, came back to my apartment to recuperate. My sister and my mother came to take care of me. My sister went to go pick up the dry cleaning and then hung it in the closet and is all the plastic. And I didn't think to check. I didn't think to check it.
Who
and
would?
I was recuperating. And so then when I was up and, a few weeks later and walking around and getting, when you have surgery, it's more of the muscles that are cut into that are sore and hurt. And once those started healing, I could get around. And so I got around to going in the closet and just taking the plastic off the dry cleaning and organizing. And I noticed the jacket was missing. And I called the dry cleaner and I said, this is so tragic because not only is this my father's jacket, but I know I had surgery and that's why I haven't been able to call you for a month or two. And they're like, ma'am, that thing's long gone. There's no way for us to track it down. So I wish I could have that army jacket that has Carter on the lapel back. I don't think I could fit in it anymore, but, and I don't know if my mother, I'm not sure if I'm shared that with my mother and sister while they were there. Like, I don't think I was so ashamed that I had lost that, even though it wasn't me, but I don't think I was honest with them about, or maybe I can't remember whether I told them, but I can tell you it was a long time before I was able to tell that story because it hurt so much because he had just died. So maybe he took the jacket.
There are some things in our life that have such great meaning that it does feel like a loss. You have to mourn the loss of those things. And I don't
still
feel
hurts
that
to
way
tell that story
about a lot of items,
Mm-hmm.
But there are some things that are just that special.
But it did teach me the lesson, just as you said, that you shouldn't have so much meaning on a thing. Because it's the experience of that thing that's more important. Like, it really, because I hurt so much over that. It just made me question, well, why? It's almost like, okay, you're so upset about this, Melissa. Why are you upset about it? Obvious reasons, but it really helped me. Like when my mother passed last year, I have her artwork, which I adore, but I didn't have this need to drive to Nashville and go grab a bunch of her things. Like, I have her high school class ring that she gave me. I have for my 40th birthday. I have, like I said, her artwork. And then there was a creamer thing that she gave me when she was older, and she started giving away her things. Like, bless her heart, she knew the time was coming. So, but yeah, my sister is the one going through all that stuff, and I don't have this need to call and give her a list. So, I think that you have to be careful not to let things keep you from having a relationship with people. I don't think things should cause you to hate another person. And that's why some of these political things overseas in different countries where they're fighting over land or fighting over buildings it makes me uncomfortable because I'm thinking there's a person standing right next to you that could be a brother or a sister to you, but you'd rather fight over ancestral things. And I don't know. I mean, and not to be insensitive to that. I'm just saying that we really have to take a look at ourselves. And I don't think things should be as important as people. And his jacket is certainly not as important as he was. So, but it took a long time to come to terms with the jacket. I'm like, if I see somebody in Midtown Atlanta with that jacket, because that's where the dry cleaners were, whatever. It's somewhere. Somebody's got it.
I will go negotiate it off their back for you.
Appreciate that.
And I will no longer lament the loss of my expensive lip glosses
No,
anymore.
that's what I'm saying. No, we don't compare stories.
I know.
Seriously think though that putting weights in lip, finding a way for women to purposely lose things, which sounds so horrific, but you could make a lot of money by having them. That's why apples.
I just need them to have magnets in them, and then get a magnet in my purse, so I can attach them together.
That's why crap like I'm showing it on YouTube, but like these things. That's why they're made so cheaply, so they have to replace them. And I'm showing the plug for my ear pods, whatever they are, for my laptop. There's a reason they make things cheaply now, because they want you to replace them. So anyway, sorry, I'm going off on a tangent on that.
All right, Melissa has this week's mirror mantra.
Yeah, so we talk a lot about sharing your story, which is very important. We talk about the books that are within you, and I hope that you thought of something. Of course, you thought of something that you'd love to share and tell people about. And usually, I also think that a book idea is somebody who the people around them aren't listening to them about. Right. So there's probably a lot of listeners who like, well, my husband doesn't listen, my family, but it's like something that's important to you that nobody is taking seriously. That's a book. You can express it to, I mean, why do you think Jen and I got into media? Right. So, I mean, we were able to express ourselves sometimes on this podcast or in radio, things that are kind of hard to say to the, some people closest to us at times. So here's what I want. Here's the mirror mantra for today, because it's based on not devaluing yourself and what you have to do or say. And I'm stealing this from a guy. He said this online, and I thought the guy is giving this advice to other men. So now I'm giving it to women. And it is, stop booing yourself off stage before anybody had a chance to see you perform. Stop booing yourself off the stage before anyone had a chance of seeing you perform, which means don't stop yourself before you actually accomplish something. Don't be your own worst critic and talk yourself out of doing something. Don't talk yourself out of writing this book. If you heard this and you heard Mara and you're like, I want to write a book, I want to be that bestseller, then be the bestseller. Who cares if somebody says they didn't like your story, or somebody says that you don't think you're a good writer? To me, passion can't be taught. Writing can be taught. Passion can't be taught. So if you have a passion in you that you want to share that, whether it's in story form, literary, whether it's just speak, whatever it is, in art, in fabrics, in whatever it is, in your children, whatever it is that's your passion, do it. Don't talk yourself out of it.
So good. I love that so much. I'm going to think about that all week long. I love it. Thank you so much. Okay, we want to say, is there a friend of yours who would enjoy this episode? Please share this with her. Plus, you can check out our brand new YouTube channel. It is live with videos and extended interviews. And if you like this show, please share about it on your social media and tag us so we can see it and share it as well.
What helps us continue to give you these shows is by you subscribing to the Friendzy podcast and leaving a review. So we ask, please do so. Please subscribe to the Friendzy, leave that review. And you can also sign up for our weekly email, and we will send the episode right to your inbox. And we promise we're not going to bug you. It's like one email a week about the new show and maybe some suggestions that the new show inspired, maybe some products that we talk about. We're going to give it to you right there in your inbox. So sign up at thefriendzy.com, and we add those links to the newsletter. So it's easy. It's just a click. We send it to your inbox. It's a click to listen to us. It's a click to get thefriendzy.com. That's all you got to do. Subscribe, please.
And a big thanks to our listeners who have already subscribed to our email list at thefriendzy.com. Shout out to Melinda Woods, Donna Colkett, and Nancy Treadgold. Thank you all so much.
Treadgold. That's going to be my writing. Melissa Treadgold. Thank you, Nancy, for the idea. The Friendzy is hosted and produced by me, Melissa Carter, and her, Jenn Hobby.
Sound editing by Bo Johnson.
Original soundtrack produced by Tammy Hurd for Placement Music, written and recorded by Placement Music creative team member Mark Daniels.
These are real stories connecting real women. And now it is time to go share yours. Go write that book that's inside of you.
Yes, do
It
it.
started today.
Do it. I don't care if it's on the computer, if it's a spiral notebook and a pen. It doesn't matter. If you transcribe it in your audio file on your smartphone, like just get the story out. And until next week,
Trust your gut.
share your story and stop lying about your age. Better? I think so. We'll see you next week.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you all so much.